This bike right here is Harley Davidson's biggest mistake, and I think it killed the Bronx. Take yourself back to 2018. You're a sport bike rider and you start hearing about something called more roads to Harley Davidson. You do a Google and find yourself some schmaltzy video talking about how Harley Davidson is about freedom. Okay, that's just some standard Harley feel-goodery, but then you see a shot of a kid riding some Harley branded Stasic looking bike and think, that's odd, but that's gotta be a one-off, right? But the video keeps going, and you've got some shots of a cruiser on a racetrack, and then some crazy looking new ADV bike, and then it happens. At 1 minute and 32 seconds, they tear the roof off with a shot that would live in infamy. The first concept Bronx spinning on a dyno in an anechoic chamber so that you can hear the roar of a throaty V-twin. It was literally 3 seconds of a video that sent ripples through the entire motorcycling world, shouting from the top of their lungs that Harley Davidson was back to kick ass and take names. Collectively, the motorcycling community exploded. Everyone, literally everyone on the planet was excited about this, even the people who don't care about motorcycles. The top comment on the video talks about how this was a return to form, that Harley Davidson went racing and pushed boundaries and now they're back. The second comment shouts out to Street Fighter, to which Harley Davidson replied, "I shit you not, hell yeah, brother." The next year they showed off the concept at EICMA and the world collectively creamed their jeans once again. Why? We got some specs. A 975cc liquid-cooled V-twin putting down 115 horsepower and 70 foot-pounds of torque. But there were some cracks in the armor and people started to get skeptical. It was a bike making MT09 power, but we didn't have a weight spec and we also didn't know the price. Could Harley deliver a bike at a competitive price in a category that has absolutely brutal competition? We never got the answer to that question. In 2020, Matt Levitich was defenestrated, professionally of course, and Zeitz showed up and said no. He announced Rewire, a focus on selling fewer bikes at higher prices. I've shouted about this more times than I can count, but after my last video talking about it, I started thinking, why kill the Bronx? It was at the finish line. The R&D was done. They just needed to finish it and ship it. Why waste all that money? I think it's because of the street rod. But while we're on the topic of wasting money, this is the perfect time to not do that. Cardo has just launched their Black Friday sale as of today, and it is going to run until December 5th. Right now, you can get 25% off the entire store, except for the Pack Talk Pro, by clicking that link down in the description below and using the code SPITE10. This is one of the deepest sales they've had all year, so now is the perfect time to get yourself a new Cardo, especially if you're sitting on one of those old Pack Talks. Click that link down in the description below and use the code SPITE10 for 25% off. Now, a history lesson's all well and good, but what are we actually working with here? Well, this is the Revolution X motor. This is a follow-up to the Revolution motor that was in the V-Rod and the predecessor of the Revolution Max. Now, a lot of people think you can draw a straight lineage between these motors, and you really can't. The Revolution Max is its own beast, and the Revolution is much bigger than this ever was. In this configuration, it's 749 cc's, making roughly 67 horsepower and about 48 foot-pounds of torque, while weighing in at a portly 505 pounds. Now, I hate using the words "for a Harley" because it lets Harley off the hook. This thing is only light when you consider that the bikes that were sitting next to it were close to 1,000 pounds. Also, for a Harley, we have some really nice equipment on here. We've got inverted front forks, we've got big front calipers on dual disc rotors. The motor here is water cooled, which was brand new futuristic technology in 2017 on a Harley lot, when you consider that they only had one liquid cooled motorcycle before then. But anyway, we do have 2 outboard shocks in the rear, which is just, that's classic Harley mode. It would have been too expensive to make a single shock in the rear. But mercifully, we are working with 2 17-inch rims. Normally, I don't call that out when we're talking about sport bikes, but I was wholeheartedly expecting Harley to do something really weird with this bike. In terms of wheel size, this is about the same as an SV650.
This thing is an absolute little hooligan. It is a ton of fun to ride. And one of the reasons why is because it actually handles really, really well. You really wouldn't have expected something with the Harley Davidson badge on it, circa 2017, to handle this well. I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is like sport bike-esque handling. When it gets on a corner, the suspension gets a little bit squishy. If there's bumps, the front end starts to get a little bit loose and wibbly-wobbly. But on nice, smooth pavement like this, holy cow, is it surprising how good the turn-in is and how willing this thing is to lean over. One of the questions I know people are going to ask is it fast? And the answer is no, not really. I mean, it's fast enough for you to get into trouble, for sure, but it's not going to rip your face off. If you were to compare this to an SV650, the SV650 is the faster motorcycle, just pure and simple. But that being said, the SV650 does not feel this premium. Despite there being a handful of budget items on this bike, when you're rolling down the road, it's a really nice vehicle. You can feel everything is metal and everything's designed to be interacted with. It's one of the nice things I can say about any Harley is they are really well-built motorcycles. Now, as we dip into these tighter corners here, I do want to talk about the brakes. They're an interesting setup because they have the Harley problem. They're on braided lines from the factory. They have good calipers on nice big rotors, but what we do have is a underwhelming master cylinder. This master cylinder just does not give me the feedback that I want. And the pressure it feels a little bit wooden. If they had actually sprung for a nice master cylinder on this bike, it would improve the braking feel significantly, and you'd be willing to push it just that little bit harder. Because one of the things that's really cool when you start getting sporty with this is just how permissive this motor is, how well it handles being flogged and where it makes the power. This thing loves to rev out. The same was true of the 750. This just has more under the hood with that extra 1,000 RPM in the red line. Man, this thing has no right to be as fun as it is. And one thing that really helps the handling and the feeling at the front tire are these nice wide club bars. These were actually a factory option for the Street 750 when it first came out. You could get these flat drag bars for your bike. And then when Harley made this thing, they were just like, you know what? Let's slap these big wide bars on there. And the nice thing about it is because they're so wide, you get just really fine control of the front end. It very much is just point and shoot with this bike. And again, it has no right to feel like this.
But as much fun as this motorcycle is to ride, it is one of the worst ergonomic setups I've ever felt on a motorcycle in my entire life. This thing was plagued by bad decisions and half measures that frankly ruined this motorcycle. First and foremost, this thing is about 75% the size that it should be. It does have a 30-inch seat height, but it doesn't feel like it because you're sitting on top of the bike. And the whole setup here it feels too small and too cramped. If you're over 5'7", you are not gonna fit on this motorcycle. If I pick it up and put my foot down, my feet are about that wide apart. If you've ever sat on a motorcycle that's considering itself a sport bike, this is not where your feet are. And this is where we get into the really bad decisions. This is a cruiser style tank right here, and it is designed to push your knees out so that you're in a Barcalounger seating position. And then we have a giant intake right here next to your right knee that is pushing your knee out further. So when you're sitting on this motorcycle, your knee naturally ends up about a fist from the side of the tank, and your knees are about that far apart. This is not where your feet should be on a sporty motorcycle. My feet are out under my knees instead of back under my butt. And you'll notice when I ride, I'm setting my heel on the foot peg. There's a reason for that. This 2-into-1 exhaust is straight off of the 750. And when they made this pipe, they designed it with a foot pad underneath your heel so that you don't melt your boot on the exhaust. They intended for you to rest your foot on the exhaust pipe. That is so dumb. The only object made by human hands that is more uncomfortable to sit on than this motorcycle is Jack Donaghy's Couchtown couches.
Good God, my leg! I can hack it. Pain is in the mind. Oh, sweet heaven. It's like I'm full of lightning. I'll tell you anything to make it stop. You want secrets? I'll give you secrets. This couch is a failure. I hate golf. One time in college, I smoked a clove cigarette. My natural hair color is bright red. Ah!
Amateur hour.
Now, when you add all that up, you get a truly unpleasant place to sit for any longer than about 45 minutes. After about 45 minutes on this motorcycle, my hips start to cramp like crazy. It actually becomes painful for me to sit on this bike for any longer. The seat is also not great. Part of that is down to the fact that this is an aftermarket seat and the foam is a little bit thinner, but even on the stock seat, it was never a particularly comfortable place to sit. Because the tank is so wide apart and the seat to peg ratio is so funny, my knees are really, really high. They're actually up over the tank, which kind of makes me feel like I'm sitting on a Grom almost. And all of this is a shame for two reasons. First of all, this could be a very good commuter motorcycle because all of this handlebar stuff is really low. And what that means is all of the wind that's hitting me in the head is super laminar. I'm getting nothing, no wind buffeting on my face. Absolutely nothing. In fact, despite this bike being kind of loud, I really don't have to turn my music up that high to hear it because it's not the exhaust that drowns out your music, it's the wind. And secondly, this is a very good beginner platform, assuming you were able to sort out a lot of the ergonomic stuff, because right now, it teaches you bad habits. It forces you to put your feet forward on the pegs so you're not sitting on that exhaust right there. And you end up getting that bad duck foot habit just because this is where the bike forces you to sit. But the power and the power delivery on this thing is really friendly and it's really approachable. It doesn't feel like the FTR, which is this burly, aggressive thing. This thing actually feels relatively refined. Again, it's not making nearly as much power and it's not all that fast. But as a beginner option, that's great, not to mention the price.
This bike started at $86.99, and that was without ABS, which, brace yourselves, means that you could get out of a Harley dealer for around $10,000. That is perfect for somebody looking for a gateway into the brand. Good luck doing that today without a firstborn offspring to trade in. Now, I keep comparing this to the SV650, which is $74.49 new, so you're paying an extra $1,200-ish for the pleasure of riding a Harley. But think about it like this. The SV650 has a chain final drive, it has normal valves, and it's got all the other wear items that you need to service. The HD is different. It has hydraulic lifters for the valves, meaning that you don't need to service them. It has a belt drive, which is the easiest final drive to maintain and also one of the cheapest to produce. A lot like a Honda, the only maintenance you have to do to this thing is change the oil. That is perfect for somebody who's just starting out and might not be willing to or have the know-how to do all the work themselves.
Now, this is where I enter pure speculation here. I have no data to back up what I'm about to say, but anecdotally, I can't imagine this motorcycle was a very big success. Why? I've only seen like 5 of them in as many years. I never see these things on the road. And I'd be willing to bet y'all haven't seen very many of them either. I would bet that a lot of you guys don't even remember that this motorcycle existed. And part of that problem is that it wasn't designed for the United States. It wasn't designed for an American rider. It was designed to get in under that tariff number from India.
Quick pause here for some additional context. You see, Harley Davidson is massively popular in India. If you don't believe me, look up videos talking about this bike from Indian content creators. They were so excited to be able to finally ride a Harley, a status symbol and an American icon. Before the release of the Street 500 and 750, anyone who wanted to buy a Harley had to pay a 100% tariff on imported motorcycles over a certain displacement. And there was a sliding scale with 75% tariffs on bikes over 800 cc's and 50% on bikes under. Now, I can't confirm this because I wasn't able to find the tariff rates prior to 2018, but I'm 99% sure there was an even lower rate for bikes under 500 cc's. What this means is that made a Harley twice the price for Indian customers, meaning that only the richest riders could have one. It's almost like a company that has to pay more to import a product, passes that on to customers, and the people in the country end up paying for them, because that's how tariffs work, just in case you're the kind of person who really needs to know that.
And as a result, it's built for a smaller rider. It's built for a different kind of rider. Also, here in the States, when you're talking about the price that this thing was out for, you got a lot of better options back then. You could still get an MT-09 for real cheap. You could still get in for the Street Triple, the base model Street Triple, for real cheap. You'd have to be about the Harley life to get this, especially when you consider that this thing was sitting on the dealership floor while Indian was also selling their FTR 1200. If I had to guess, nobody in the C-suite actually rode this motorcycle. Because if they did, they'd realize that under the skin is a phenomenal machine. There is a great, a 8 or a 9 out of 10 motorcycle buried underneath the bullshit here. And what they looked at was they looked at the spreadsheet that said, you know what, the Street 750, the Street Rod, it just didn't sellin', so we're gonna have to write it off. And they wrote off the XR 1200X. And because they were using these sporty cruisers as a thumb in the wind for naked bikes, they're just like, naked bikes, they don't sell for our audience. With a bike at the finish line, just like the Bronx was, it makes it really hard for me to believe that they would have canned that bike without some sort of market indicator. And I have a feeling they looked at this as the market indicator that the Bronx was not going to sell. And that is so dumb, because they cut so many corners here and they buried a great bike under a layer of cruiser bullshit. And honestly, I think that's what caused us to not get the Bronx.
So dumb. So dumb. So dumb. So dumb. So dumb. So dumb. So dumb.
I say this every single time I talk about Harley Davidson. Whenever they set their minds to something, they make a phenomenal motorcycle. The Pan America has its problems for sure, but it is a great bike. And the Sportster 975 is exactly what I wanted a modern Sportster to feel like. Powerful, great handling. It's a little expensive, but it's a great looking modern interpretation of an American icon. But no, we couldn't have the Bronx because somebody in the C-suite saw how bad this motorcycle did, and they started to hear people complaining about the MT-09 having similar specs at probably a lower price. And as a result, we can't have anything nice. Just like Thanos, Jochen Zeitz took one of the coolest motorcycles ever to be announced by the motor company and snapped it out of existence overnight. Such a shame, man. Such a shame.